This is the Ground Game Podcast, where we cover politics from the ground up. Here are your hosts, Tom Lobianco and Patrick Fingston.
From sea to shining sea, above the fruited plain, welcome to the Ground Game Podcast. I'm Patrick Fingston. Welcome to our special Friday live stream. Tom will be along in just a moment. We've got a great panel for you today. We're here to take your questions, your comments, your thoughts, all of that stuff as we get into it. Tom's a busy boy. So he'll be here in just a second. But I'm pleased to bring in our panel to start with. Indiana Democratic consultant Lindsay Hake and Illinois Republican honcho-ish sort of thing. I don't know what you call him. He's a member of the Illinois Republican State Central Committee. If you believe an Illinois political newsletter writer here or there, he may be considering a run for governor in 2026. I don't know if you believe those political writers, but Aaron Del Mar is here. So, folks, welcome. Hello. How are you?
Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
Thanks for taking time to hang out with us today. I have decided to rebrand the show for the Midwest. So we've got our Illinoisan, we've got our Indianan, and or I don't know. Oh, God.
Hoosier, baby. Right? That's coming. You have two Hoosiers on here right now. Indiana University in the house.
I know better.
When you've got the Illinoisan correcting you on your nomenclature.
No, I know. I lived there for 5 years. I know better. It just slipped.
Now you're going to have all 92 counties welcoming any county from Illinois to join us over here in the Hoosier State, not just 30.
that is so there's actually this interesting effort being made to I don't know if it's even a real effort, right? That the Speaker of the House in Indiana wants to annex some counties from Illinois. My home county is one of them, along the Illinois-Indiana border, that passed a non-binding, essentially secession resolution last year to skip out on Illinois and move to Indiana. Aaron, do you think Illinois counties should bounce?
I can totally see their argument why they'd want to go over there. The Republicans in this great state of Indiana have done an amazing job of keeping their finances under control, working really hard. And, I could see why a lot of our southern counties would love to annex and go over to Indiana.
Yikes.
Lindsay, do you want them?
I mean, I would be careful before making a statement like that, because you've got some pretty tremendous issues here in Indiana, including an impending property tax drama that is unfolding to be one of the largest issues in decades here in Indiana. And that is in addition to the unfolding human services tragedies that are still yet occurring that we're learning about daily. And while the legislature is trying to fix them, you've got wait list after wait list after wait list for services. And that's not just services for the medically complex. That's services for, everyday Joe Hoosier who's over 65. So this is a complex scenario here for our aging population. And I would think twice before saying that.
It's interesting. Before we got started, I was joking with everyone in our group that we've got maybe two of the most marginalized communities, Illinois Republicans and Indiana Democrats, in this show. So it's nice to have you guys around. Tom's here. Hey, buddy.
Yo, what's up, dude?
He's a busy boy these days.
How are you? You're not in the gulag, or is Chicago the gulag?
Oh, you're talking about Shy Gaza? No, we're not in Shy Gaza. I'm right outside of Champaign, Illinois, right down in Central Park. Here, it looks like a scene from Yellowstone if you're looking out the window. We pulled over to the side to be able to get on with you guys today.
So Yellowstone.
So you might see semis going sides in the back.
I don't think there's anything about Champaign, Illinois that looks anything like the Yellowstone National Park.
Well, it's God's country out here. I mean, there's a lot of great
that's my neck of the woods, man. So it's flat. It is completely flat around there. So, well, thanks guys for being here. There's a lot we want to hit on in the time that we have this morning, and Tom as well with the madness that's going on in DC. We've decided to centralize our conversation from Illinois and Indiana, because Lord knows we need to get the conversation out of DC a little bit. So let's hit our first topic.
First down.
Right, Elon Musk is the actual president, right?
Yes.
Tom, I'll let you lead here on this one, because you've obviously been doing some reporting on where we're at with on where we're at, on how it's going, and what we're seeing out of the Muskian weird transition of our government. What's happening right now?
It's Muskie in the deep state, all right. I'll tell you that.
Sounds icky.
Yes, it is as icky as you sound. I mean, this is the equivalent of having a Deloitte come in to do your books, and then when you go ask questions, they're like, "We're not here," and then they leave. And the whole place is stripped bare, and you're like, "What just happened?" And everybody's like, "I don't know." I like the White House press secretary, who is the press secretary for the most powerful nation on earth, with access to things like computers and internets and digital services and trillions upon trillions of dollars and lots of staff, who just couldn't for the life of her figure out what a trade publication is, and really struggled mightily to find information that is available on the Googles, or perhaps even a government search, usaspending.gov. So it's really
is that site still up, Tom?
Yeah, it is, because that needs
for now.
Needs to be used for clipping services for the new Donald Trump press service, which is owned by Elon Musk. So even Trump's press office is owned by Elon Musk. You have to go on to x.com. Now, look, I'm just going to, is it a coup? No, it's not. And let me tell you why. It is a government contractor run amok. It is a government staffer run amok. This is not Pinochet. It isn't. Okay. Could it become that? Could Elon, I don't know, automate drones somehow? Does this turn into a James Cameron hellscape of a movie with incredible cinematography? It could. Or perhaps this turns into a massive bureaucratic fuck up It would not be
All
the
right,
first.
so we're allowed to swear on this podcast.
Yes,
Patrick,
we
you didn't
are.
tell me
And,
that was allowed. All right,
Tom,
well, now you're
just
speaking
send
my
us
vernacular.
demonetized. So,
You
no,
didn't
I
tell me that
think
we're going to be able to swear. You didn't tell me it was going to be a Chicken Little thing where the sky's falling and I was going to be outnumbered 3-1. But
all right,
let's go.
fine. Well, first of all,
They invited us, Aaron.
Right. No, that's cool.
well,
I mean, let's just take one of the greatest minds of our century and let's put him in there. Let's start auditing books and start cutting fat.
he's not auditing books. He's destroying the entire framework of the Constitution.
Sure. Okay.
What is he?
Right,
Hey man,
all right,
actually,
hold on. Let me ask you
actually,
this, Aaron. Let me give you a chance.
Right.
Let me give you a chance to defend this, okay? Because Republicans, my former party, were the ones that ran around during the election talking about the unelected bureaucrats in Washington and the deep state. Well, here's your unelected bureaucrat who came across as an illegal immigrant who's now trying to completely undo 250 years of our federal procedures. How do you defend this?
So what I would defend is that our federal government has been completely bloated for decades with policies and with extra staff that has just been added on and added on. Just like you can see in our Illinois government, using that as a micro example. What the Democrats have done in Illinois is what the federal government has done over the last several decades, and especially in the last 4 years. So going through and reducing headcounts, becoming more efficient, becoming more regulated as far as making a better output with a better product, and looking for excellence within our federal government instead of just regular average Joes, I think is a positive thing. When we start looking at the different tools that we need to do, we have to be able to reform our government. And the first thing it has to do is some of this has got to be dismantled, check out the internal gears and the bearings, and then rebuild it. And this is just step one. And everybody else is screaming and crying and yelling and having their safe spaces invaded. But right now, this is something that needs to happen, right? You have to have your their exams before you can go and diagnose the problems and get the right medicine to fix it.
do you think it's like too mean when I saw some of these people put these bumper stickers on Teslas now saying that Elon sucks Nazi cock? Like,
yeah, so people can put whatever they want on whatever car they want, and that's their right. We're in America. If you want to buy a Tesla and you want to put a bumper sticker on it, go ahead and do it. But what I'm concerned about is the vision of what we're going to have in the next 4 years. And the first 4 weeks of this administration, I feel like we're on the right track and we're going to have substantial change in a positive manner. And everyone keeps crying and moaning about all this. You had bureaucrats that were unelected there for the last 50 years that were doing the same thing. Finally, we got one of the brightest minds in our generation working to rebuild our government. And this is something that should have been happening years ago.
All right, let me ask you a constitutional question then.
Sure.
Who decides where money is spent?
Right. Of course, the Congress decides that, right? Of course, and that is in our Constitution. But here's the thing: all your Democrat friends are paralyzed right now. They have no idea what's happening. They have the ability to sue. They're short on the draw. They haven't been planning. They thought Kamala Harris was going to be the winner and it was going to be status quo. And now what's happening is we're going in there, we're shaking it.
I have a press release from the White House saying they're afraid of one of those Democrats. Did you see that?
Yeah. No, I didn't see that.
That there's a black lawmaker who's threatening violence. Did you get that one? Here, hold on. Keep on, man.
I'm not on the press list.
I'm not on the press list.
They're worried about this stuff, man. It's really crazy. Hold on a second. I'll pull it up.
I think the Aaron's conversation though regarding funding is I think we need to remember that their funding streams more than just congressionally tied. And you've got, like, for example, you watched the entire world fall into upheaval last week with the
entire world fell into upheaval
within the OB rescission, all of the federal grants that were announced that were all of a sudden unfrozen with a magical.
So here's the
the whole world fell into upheaval. I don't know. I don't see satellites falling out of the sky. I don't see any mass wars that weren't here before.
There has been Elon Musk space junk falling out of the sky. Maybe you missed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go, Aaron. Let me just read this official White House press release on February 5th, 2025. Calls for violence continue from radical lawmakers. Last night at a protest, they put quotes around protest, outside the Department of the Treasury, DC Representative LaMonica McIver, Democrat of New Jersey, unleashed another despicable call for violence as she declared, "Shut down the city. We are at war." Her sick threat comes days after House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York, instructed his members to fight against President Trump's agenda in the streets. So what does that mean? Like, is that, are they worried about attacks? Like, are they worried about lawmakers coming to their houses?
Well, I can't speak for whoever wrote that. I can tell you this: I'm not scared about lawmakers going to other lawmakers' houses and having battles in their front yard or their backyard, for that matter. I think that we live in a constitutional republic. The president has wide, powers as the executive branch, and I think you have your judicial branch that can intercede when they think something's violating the Constitution. And you have 435 members of Congress. If the Democrats have a problem, they can file some legislation, see if they can get it through. There's a very small Republican majority in Congress and a very small Republican majority in the Senate. So you have a lot of blue Republicans that are out there that lean that way. So, let's use the system as it is. The real situation is the Democrats got caught with their pants down. They don't know how to react to this because they're not prepared for this type of situation. And they're backpedaling, trying to catch up to find out what's happening. The Republicans have been working on this for over four years since Joe Biden won, and we were ready to go on day one. So when you guys all catch up to the rest of us and you want to start legislating and get in the game, well, go grab your helmet and then we can all play.
Okay, I promise I'm not going to make this 45 minutes of picking on Aaron. Okay, that's as much as I like to do that, and any of our conversations are essentially that. The point here is that we're starting with the Elon thing, and you have to, at the beginning of this, defend what is happening. And listen, I am a fiscal conservative from the jump, right? From my entire background shows it. And I completely agree with the idea that federal spending line by line should be audited and put sunshine on it. And we should do some serious cutting of federal spending. I am all in on that. But I think it is terrible policy. I think it is terrible. Let me finish. I think it is terrible policy to just go in by executive order and turn off the spigot to everything. Because you have Medicaid, you have Social Security, you have et cetera in the federal government. It's just too blunt. And I don't know who you think you're helping in that regard.
Well, that's exactly what ends up happening, because you have unintended consequences with policies like this. And look, I'm a big fan of former Congressman Jim Inhofe's waste book too. I leaped through that mofo whenever I walked into his office, and it was a fun read. And it's also, if you haven't read it, you need to take a look at it. I'm sure someone has it somewhere out there on the interwebs. But anyway, it's a very large knife that you're cutting with when you have these conversations. And as a public interest lobbyist in Indiana, where you have all of these programs that Aaron is talking about as the very top layer of government programming that is public interest programming on the guillotine's pole, the very first slice, before any other conversation about large subsidies for corporations seeking to enable their profits. This is unfortunate that you have this being the top line of your first line of defense. And you're going to hurt. What ends up happening is you're going to end up hurting the worst off Americans first. Your poorest Americans will be disproportionately impacted by this policy. And if you're okay with that, going to bed at night, looking yourself in the mirror, then I'm sorry for you.
All right.
Hey, do you guys see this?
I know I sleep perfectly fine. So, totally okay with that. I mean, here's the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is that none of this has actually happened. There's a lot of passion. Every time people were screaming and yelling about the tariffs with Canada and Mexico, and then what happened? They never ever came to fruition. We got 10,000 troops going to the southern border. We got Canada putting up more helicopters, right? Additional 10,000 troops, and nothing actually happened. So why doesn't everybody just take a little breath, take a step back, and let's see what actually happens? When there's times that need to be having adjustments, then the adjustments will be made. We're not talking about starving people. We're not talking about kicking people out of their houses. What we're talking about is making substantial change that needed to be happening. And unfortunately, it's such a big swath.
Closing USAID is literally going to starve people.
That is what is happening. And
So
that
if
is
you look
not,
at what they're talking about the USAID, if you look at the groups of the 300 people that they're talking about right now, the first 300 people that they're going to keep back, most of those are dealing with Africa. They're dealing with starvation groups. They're dealing with AIDS. Those programs are still there. Your DEI programs, your crazy programs in some parts of Kenya, those all got cut. But nobody's saying that we're
They're
not going to
bringing
do that. We're saying that we're
everybody
going to review
home.
it.
They're
and bring
bringing
back.
everyone home.
my colleagues at USAID are literally uncertain as to whether they have a job, sir.
That you're right. And you know what? They may not have a job. They may have to go back into the private sector, and they may have to find. Well, nobody is guaranteed work for life just because you work for the federal government, right?
But
Just like you shouldn't be in the private sector.
as
So we're not
long
going to just sit here and
as-
talk about keeping people's jobs just to keep people's jobs. That's
As
what got
long
us
as
into this trouble to begin
You don't
with.
think
program.
you don't think USAID or any humanitarian funding is worthwhile?
No, I do. And I think it should be moved over to the State Department or the Treasury, and that should be where it should be executed at. And I think that they can do the job of 10,000 people with a lot less than 10,000 people. I'm not suggesting that all these programs are bad. I'm saying that there's a lot of the programs that need bad. They need to be evaluated. You've only had a month of the administration to go through and review each of these and the core values that they have, and if they're being effective. And so once they're being effective, I think they should continue to be instituted. Ones that are not should be cut. But we shouldn't keep people on the payroll just to keep people on the payroll. It's not the job of the federal government to employ this nation.
I find it very curious that an individual who just completely bestows the amazing opportunities to have Elon Musk as a part of the conversation is lecturing me about any opportunity within an agency for humanitarian process that's gone. That's literally gone. It just was erased. I mean, the agency is no mas. So
the agency is being shifted and it could be going through a different program. Instead of its own agency, it's going to be run either on Treasury or right now it's being done under the State Department. Under Marco Rubio, who had unanimous consent to be in the Secretary of State by the United States Senate, which included all of your Democrat friends in the Senate. He's the administrator, so let him go administrate.
Wait a minute, hold on. Who are your Democratic friends? Which ones? I'm sorry. Which one you're talking about?
He's referring to Durbin and Duckworth from Illinois, who did vote.
Marco Rubio
gotcha.
Marco Rubio had unanimous consent to be appointed to the Secretary of State for the United States.
Well,
all Republicans and all Democrats have said that, this is the right guy. And so now he's becoming the administrator for what used to be USAID, and let him go administrate.
Have you seen these bills they started putting in now where they're making fun of people by name?
All kinds of people file bills, but it doesn't mean they ever see the light of day or even get out of the Rules Committee or even go to the floor to the vote. And even those that go to the floor to the vote don't always get the presidential signature, and they get chopped up when they get in the Senate. So you keep on looking at all of these different bills. Let's see what actually happens.
What would you name the USAID restructuring bill? Since what
would I name it? I think you want to name it something fancy so we can message it well. I don't care what you name it. You can call it the Musk bill. What I care about is what it actually does on a public policy side, and what are the ramifications, and does it do what it's supposed to do? Not how we're going to message it or call it something fancy or cute so it gets through, or you can use it as political fodder against somebody that votes against something because it's got a weird name.
But what's the legislative plan for USAID for when it gets kicked back into gear? Or is it just,
they don't have one?
So
there is no plan.
Or no, there might be. I don't know.
There might be a plan, but none of us are members of Congress. So none of the four of us are being read in it. We're not a part of the executive administration. So I think that everyone, like I said, needs to take a breath, needs to stop pretending that the world is falling down, and let's work to see what happens. Because here's the deal. When the United States fails, Democrats fail too. So we need to be on the same team. And Democrats need to fall in line. And I do believe that the administration should hear the concerns of the other side. But that's what needs to happen.
Get in line, Lindsay.
Patrick, you're not allowed to fall in line.
Right. See that? You're joking. You know what I mean? You don't want to have a serious conversation. You want to light people's hair on fire. We should be calling this the gaslighting game instead of the ground game.
I believe there is commonality though in terms of moving when everyone does better, we all do better, right? Yeah. But that your insinuations that we have to fall in line are just counter to the basic American process of debate that we have in our
I'm not saying you don't debate. I'm just saying you know what I mean? Instead of crying about something that hasn't happened yet, right? Give your input. You have to get anything through Congress on both sides is going to have to be compromised. There's no way that you're going to, because there's such small minorities. If we had
who's a good
400
point
out of the
person for that?
435 seats in the House, I would say, yeah, we don't need a compromise, but
L- let-
we don't.
There's
me-
only
let
a
me-
two-seat majority, sir, in the
Correct.
House.
That's what I'm saying. So you have to have compromise on the Democrat side if you want to get any legislation through.
Okay, sorry, Aaron. You're going very fast. Hey, Lindsay, if you were going to lead on this bill, you're a lobbyist, you've done this work before. Who would you put in to actually move a USAID restructuring bill through? Who would be a good shepherd of that legislation?
Well, I guess I can't name a Democrat, can I?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Andre Carson.
I wouldn't put Andre Carson at the top of my list.
No.
Actually, I would put someone like Congressman Jim Himes. You know, you've got an individual who's been, sorry, that's not falling into the Midwest vibe here. Sorry, Patrick, the Congressman Himes. From literally, I think the most well-to-do congressional district in entire U.S. Congress. But in any case, his experience would be my pick, especially with these international and geopolitical issues that USAID deals with. And while I agree with Aaron that, there are some I appreciate the fact that there is concern about there being some programs that may not necessarily be quote unquote humanitarian. I hear that. But the basic premise of USAID is election security. I mean, you have election observers across the world watching trying to ensure basic fundamental democracy in some emerging democracies and other countries. And, those programs are on hold now. And this is not just, messing around with, being mad about a drag queen hour in Africa. This is a serious issue where and program that's being run within the department that has large connotations with our basic fundamental human rights as well. And so that's nothing to poo-poo and shove into another agency just to do it because Elon Musk says it's a travesty or whatever he called it.
All right,
Yeah,
before we move on to
Elon has all this power because he's a staffer. So, and we've seen that, right? I mean, ultimately, he is answerable to the president of the United States. And I'm going to agree with Aaron here. I don't understand the hair on fire thing because it's the president of the United States who has removed us from the International Criminal Court, who is saying that, the U.S., it's the president of the United States, Donald Trump, who is realigning with the authoritarians. It's not Elon doing that.
I agree too. And it also really, it's why I really try to make sure that I'm watching more than just, I don't want to be that Democrat accused of just watching MSNBC because it's really unfair to watch these conversations happen where people are elaborating and even lying about what's happening in these conversations. And to Aaron's point, especially because I really identify with that, it's bad enough to you don't have to lie about it. The hyperbole is getting a little out of control, frankly, from my estimation. And even listening to some of the commentators, even on the hellscape that is Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is, it's really tough for me to just want to shut it off because it's really
I shut it off.
Watching.
I don't use it. I use scrapers.
I hear you, but I've got clients.
I get a lot more work done.
On it, so. It's like giving it up for Lent. I would love to be one of those people who gives up social for Lent, but unfortunately,
that's why you got us.
That's my job.
You might call a reporter on the modern scraper of of all this.
But I do think that's a great point, though, because you've got all this hyperbole. You need to move past that and focus on brass tacks and what's really happening here.
All right, we're 30 minutes in, and we're not even through one topic here. So let's move on.
It's second down.
So out of nowhere, last week, President Trump in a weird press conference with his boy Bibi, all of a sudden decides that we're going to put boots on the ground in Gaza and move 2 million people out and make it the Riviera of the Mediterranean in the Middle East. Lindsay, I'm going to let you start here. What the hell?
Well, obviously, I've been watching this very, very closely before even the tragedy of October 7th. Obviously, many of you know that I work very closely with the Jewish community here in Indiana, and it was our reaction initially when this was announced by President Trump. We're just like, that's never going to happen. There's just no way. I mean, we just functionally don't see how it could possibly happen. I will also remind everyone that if you haven't visited the former Trump casino in Atlantic City to see what a shit show that hole in the ground is, I really don't have much confidence in seeing any type of Trump casino type Gaza Strip. It's just, it inspires zero confidence in any way trying to be a Riviera of the Middle East, if that's what he called it. I think that's what he called it. But I would also remind everybody that Beirut was that before we had a pretty large escalation there, 10 or so years ago. So we need to remember how this is functionally possible, logistically possible. I just don't see how it happens.
Aaron, is this serious?
I think that Donald Trump is a person that likes to be a visionary and come up with different out-of-the-box plans. And this one, in concept, had some very small merit to it, but I don't think it's functionally going to be able to happen, right? You're not going to displace 1.2 million people. The other Arab countries around them have already, forcefully said that they're not going to take them in. But if you look at it from an individual standpoint, I live in Palatine, Illinois. And if somebody relocated me out of Palatine and took my home away with no compensation, I would be incredibly upset, just like the Palestinians have been for decades, And so to say that you're going to move them out, take their land, and even if it's in rubble right now, I don't think that's really going to work. I think that he is probably placating to Yahoo because they had their conference and had their discussion, and Trump doesn't run anything by staff before he gives out a press conference. I think that the viability of that project is very limited. I don't think that Americans are going to want to send their children to the Gaza Strip and have them be shot at, because I don't think the Palestinians are going anywhere. And so, no, I don't think it's a plan. I think it was an idea that was kind of half-baked. But I think that there really needs to be strong policy to discuss what's going to happen there. I think that if we're going to rebuild the Gaza Strip, it should be with Palestinian thoughtfulness inside of it. And if those jobs are going to be created, I think maybe we should go into a lot of that Palestinian group that lives there and give these people an opportunity to rebuild their home.
And Tom, nobody looked more surprised than Susie Wiles.
Well, yeah. I was wondering about the dementia thing when I heard about that, because it reminded me of when Joe Biden said, "I beat Medicare," because it's like every president, has different troubles dealing with things. And I think we're back to, reminding ourselves that, when Trump says something, he doesn't really mean it, or maybe he does, but nobody really knows.
Or it's a position. He's taking a position that he can, most of the time when Trump talks, he's not talking about the first issue. He's talking about the second and third behind it. And so I think people need to kind of look into that more definitely, of what's the strategy and the plan, and more of what's the why. Why are we taxing Canada and Mexico with the tariffs? Because we want to see the result. Then we got the result and it went away. So there's a lot of saber rattling that Donald Trump does. And we don't really know what's going to happen until you really start seeing, the rubber hit the road.
Kind of makes me think
but that's
that we
the problem
write
with this
about
whole
it. Hold on. It makes me, hold on, Patrick. Hold on. I view this as a reporter. All right. And just because, there seems to be confusion about what a reporter is and what, objectivity and, standing back from things. I know there are some people who are very concerned that we're secret members of the CIA and that we're secretly, covertly.
Most reporters aren't smart enough for that.
Are you in charge of chemtrails too?
I am. I know. Did you just transition in that moment from the chemtrails? Sorry, it was too easy. We're also snarky as fuck.
100%.
But as a reporter, it's objective. It's our job to go out and present information that's accurate. And I think that I've had this discussion with other journalists that it's not useful to report what the president is saying because we don't know what he means. And if I go out and write and I put my name at the top of things, unlike all these anonymous sources that are out there, saying things which may or may not be true, part of being a reporter is, establishing credibility. That's why I put my name at the top of things. And so if I put my name at the top of something that says the U.S. wants to purchase Panama, well, that's wrong because it wasn't about that. It was about a diplomatic maneuver to push China and the Road and Belt Initiative out of Panama, which is a serious policy discussion. I mean, that is very serious diplomatic maneuvering. And I look at this. This is for our Indiana friends, and Aaron, you might not know this man. I used to love talking with him. There's a former state senator in Indiana named Mike Delph, who would make all kinds of promises. And I'll just tell you, as a reporter, you were the dumbest fuck in the room if you quoted any of it. You really were. All right. And I never quoted Delph. I love talking with him. He was a blast. You could waste hours hanging out with him. He's a real nice guy. But nothing he ever said came true.
He might be the longest lasting staffer left on Victoria Spartz's staff.
Oh my God. Is he? No. Are you kidding me? Wow. So like, I mean, like I look at it and I'm just like, all right. And I think that's what we're trying to get to here. I mean, I agree, like with the, why are people freaking out? Like, the president goes out there and says like DEI, black people, transgenders everywhere. And everybody's like, oh my God. But what does he really mean? What is he really talking about? And I think that would be useful, because if he's really talking about, a McKinley-esque a reshuffling of a global order and trying to, take things over in the Western Hemisphere, it almost seems like it's better if I'm not on the plane with the president. It seems, as a reporter, as somebody, who's trying to get accuracy out there, it would be better if I'm not at the White House, fighting with activists and whatnot, because that's the sideshow. It doesn't tell anybody anything.
I thought we're talking about the Gaza Strip. What are we talking about
Gaza?
Here?
Okay,
right?
well,
sure. You talk about Trump's fight in Gaza, or you're talking about a state senator that nobody knows about.
You didn't.
Okay, what are we doing here?
I'm not going to go back through it. You can replay it if you want to hear it. Delph's hilarious, by the way. But what is since we have the Panama example here, what is the foreign policy goal of this Gaza thing? Or I mean, what's the right? So obviously he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to put a casino in there, or maybe he does, who knows? But like, what is the end result? Because otherwise I'm not talking about it.
Right. And so is it long-term sustainability that is the goal, or peace in the Middle East, and if that's the case, then I'm here for it. But the devil's in the details with these, and bringing economic stability to Gaza, Palestine, whomever, anyone in the Middle East is a huge, huge task. And I'm here for him to listen to him, try to start explaining how he wants to do that. If that's what he meant by that, I mean, that's a real goal. But we need to understand what he means by this. And I would point you to a really interesting podcast I listened to this morning from Politico, the Deep Dive podcast with Representative Lisa McClain. She really understands she believes that Trump is really going to a long-term game in trying to explain some of these. And I think we really miss that, what his long-term vision is in the conversation when he's, because, everyone freaks out, to Aaron's point, about whatever comment is being said in that press conference. And we don't have a long-term vision for what he's either not clearly communicating it, which is probably why Susie freaked out in the background. And then, right. And so is this a trouble of messaging, or we just don't understand what his goals are? I think that's, as a reporter, got to be so challenging, because you really don't want to misrepresent.
Can I just tell you something? It's not challenging. Maybe it's just because I've been doing it for a decade now. Like, it's like somebody who throws curveballs all the time as opposed to heaters. Like, you get used to it. And I'm used to it. I don't live tweet the press briefing. I did it for the first two. It got great engagement because people like crazy shit. They're like, it's like, aha, I gotcha. You people are evil. Haha, I gotcha. And I'm so outraged.
But where I left that last comment was the intent is the important thing. And that's where I think many people are still caught up in the intensity of the initial statement, that they don't see what his long-term goal is in a statement like that. And when you're dealing with Gaza, I mean, that people are dying, and we need to understand that this is a humanitarian crisis, and we need to fix things. And I hope that's his goal.
All right, let's move on. So it certainly looks like Donald Trump's going to get his entire cabinet, with no pushback other than on Matt Gaetz, who was DOA, because everybody hates Matt Gaetz.
And Boris.
I wouldn't say no pushback. I mean, that RFK hearing was a shit show.
Oh yeah,
fair,
the part where
fair.
he said that COVID only saves the Jews.
And
I was like, God damn, I forgot about that one. That was insane.
I'm struck by the lack of backbone from Republicans in this, specifically Tom Tillis from North Carolina, who should have shut down RFK from the start. I'm pissed off at my friend Todd Young from Indiana,
Thank you.
who should have absolutely voted against Tulsi Gabbard, and there is nothing in his background as a Marine and as a guy who's supposed to be one of the normies that should have voted for her. Tom, is there a surprise at this point that there was that everybody's going to get through, seemingly?
Well, you remember we had on Tegan Goddard a little while ago, and he foreshadowed a lot of this when he said that Elon Musk is the enforcer. If you look at, I know a lot of people were calling Todd Young's office, lobbying him, his constituents, but there's only one constituent that matters right now, and his name is Elon, because he is the William Randolph Hearst of this moment, and he set the laser on Todd Young. And it worked. So no. Am I surprised? No, this is the power dynamic right now. If Lindsay, if Elon says that, he needs a contract in Indiana and he points the laser on you, well, guess what? You lost your work. That's what happens when you're the richest man with no accountability.
For those of you who are not on Twitter any longer, on X any longer, that last weekend was Twitter diplomacy straight from Elon with Todd Young. And that was just aghast. I was aghast because of this. And to watch this unfold in front of me as a constituent who had contacted the office on this very issue, both Tulsi and RFK, I was extremely disappointed to learn by an effing Facebook post from my senator that he was going to be supporting these two individuals who are absolutely just should not be part of the United States government in any form, shape, or way.
Aaron, how do Republicans manage the understanding that Donald Trump has now put two very clearly non-Republicans into his Republican cabinet, and people who have long espoused positions that do not track with what used to be the Republican Party? How do you look at these and say, yeah, these guys are good, especially the vaccine denier?
Right. So the first thing that I come up with is that over 77 million people elected Donald Trump to be the president. He won the electoral vote and he won the popular vote by the majority. And so I think that when you're the president of the United States, you should be entitled to have the cabinet of your choice. That's the starting point where I look for. From there, the United States Senate should consent to each of them. And certainly some of the, Matt Gaetz was a non-starter for me. You saw, I met him at the RNC convention in Milwaukee. The way that he behaved there, the tactics, just engaging with the Illinois delegation was completely inappropriate. So I really didn't have a problem with that. I think that if you look at the past presidents, there's always been controversial picks for the cabinet. I mean, why did Buttigieg, who was the mayor of South Bend, all of a sudden be the Secretary of Transportation? I think that was ahead of his skis there too. However, if you look at, some of the people that they put forward, the policies that Donald Trump, ran on, which he's trying to execute now, these are people that are going to implement those policies. And that's what the American people voted for. Do they give me pause? Certainly. Do I think that RFK is probably the best pick? No, but I'm not the president, and I'm not the person that gets to make that call. Do I think that some of the other ones are qualified? I think Pam Bondi was certainly qualified. She was Attorney General of Florida for 2 cycles, right? If you don't like her positions, she's certainly qualified. Positions are decided by elections, and the people that are appointed there have to have the ability to execute. Did I have concerns about the Secretary of Defense? Yes, from the point of his military background, a point that he's going to be in charge of 3 million people. That's a very top executive office that has to do with budgeting and employment. And, there's some strong concerns there. But I think that what you need to do is figure out who the figurehead is. Those people, if they're worth a grain of salt, should surround themselves with career people that have done these jobs. They're undersecretaries, they're administrators. Keep the right things going, change the ones that need to be modified so we can move America forward. And yes, there's a lot of splash. Donald Trump is a promoter, sometimes a self-promoter. Certainly, this can have some appearances to a circus. What I care about is policy. I care about substantive change in the right direction. I think that we as the Republican Party do not want to be the party of hurting peoples or hurting other countries. We want to build our relationships. But I think first we need to do is we need to level the playing field in a lot of these groups, a lot of these organizations. And I think we're very heavy. I think that we can shed a lot of our personnel and still being able to operate and function as a coherent government. At the end of the day, the Republicans are taking a position of limited government and limited staffing. And I think that is a fresh perspective that a lot of people are going through. I think that's part of why the Democrats aren't saying a whole lot right now, because I think they know that the federal government's bloated. I think that they know a lot of these different organizations are misappropriating money, and it's taxpayer dollars. And, everyone talks about, well, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are just going for the big businesses. Well, you know what? Everyone should be really careful about that. Because I don't know about you, but my 401k, my IRA, the police pension funds, fireman funds, all of those different funds are in Apple. They're in Microsoft. They're in Amazon. And when those companies fail, your 401 and your retirement programs fail. So those things have long-lasting effects. So everyone just saying that all these big businesses are the boogeyman. Well, those boogeymen are the ones that are growing our economy. And if we're too punitive with that, then we're going to have challenges. And while, yes, there are a lot of these rich guys that are skirting income tax. And I think that needs to be evaluated and adjusted, of course. But they're also the largest payer of payroll tax, the largest payer of property taxes in the business of the growing. They're the largest growth in sales tax. So, yeah, you know what I mean? So everyone's looking at the soup, but nobody's getting to the meatballs while these companies are there. And that economy is our string of soup. It's not our military where we spend so much money on. It's our economy that dictates what's happening across the rest of the world. And so when people start looking at that and starting to plant different leaders in each of these different secretary positions, I think that's important. Number two is that, Donald Trump is one of the first guys to hire, and he's just as fast to fire. And if you look at his administration in 2016, if you weren't getting the job done to where he wanted to, you were history. You were fired. So a lot of these Senate confirmations that we're having, they may not be here in 6 months. If they're not getting the job done, they will be gone. And then somebody else will be there. Rex Tillerson and all those other people, all history. Chiefs of staff, history. The Republican Party and Donald Trump are looking for results. That's what it is. And he has made a lot of promises. So if he doesn't start fulfilling these promises, Republicans are a fickle group. They will turn on him like they'll turn on anybody else. So he's got to get this job done, and he's got to get it done quick. Because if not, we're going to get crushed in the 2026 midterms.
All right, we're almost out of time. I got to hit one more thing. And we've been picking on Aaron for 45 minutes. We're going to pick on Lindsay for a couple of minutes.
Watch out.
Democrats are completely MIA in Washington. They are driftless. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they are. They don't know how to respond to what's going on out there. I don't know what the hell your party stands for at this point. Lindsay, defend what the hell's going on.
I don't see how you could possibly think that, given the conversations we've been having in these confirmation hearings. I mean, you've had
they've been scattershot and completely clueless.
Well, I'm not going to speak to that, but you do have leaders like Jasmine Crockett. Elizabeth Warren took everyone to task. To me, it was a really good opportunity to have that conversation, but also remind you that no one gives a shit about what is happening in those committee rooms in DC. They care about whether their costs are going down at home, and they're fucking not. People are trying to afford groceries, trying to afford utility bills, when these corporations that Aaron's talking about are raking in massive profits, paying zero effing taxes. And taking all consumers for a ride. So when you tell me that you don't think Democrats have their shit in gear in Washington, I mean, there might be a few examples, but there's an example every day of people who don't have their shit together in Washington. I could
Your party is a cluster right now. And the reason why is because half of your party believes in what's happening and you don't want to say anything because their constituents are going to be out with pitchforks and torches. Because a lot of the stuff that they're talking about are more mainstream, reducing the federal government, reducing You know
That's
what I mean?
everybody. Everybody's got a
Right.
pitchfork. We're all ready to burn it
Right.
down. It's because
You know,
shit is
think about
too
the price of
expensive.
eggs. When I was a kid, eggs are so cheap. We used to throw them at our enemies' houses. Right now, you're not going to do it because they're costing you $8 a dozen. This is crazy. But
It's
right, but
not-
this is what we
and
inherited.
And that's not a joke. $8 is what I paid last week for
Because we can afford to pay that. The people on this podcast can afford that. When the gas is $3 a gallon, we fill up the tank. When it's $6 a gallon, we still fill up the tank. We're not the people that we're talking about.
Your ComEd bill is out the damn roof, and my Duke Energy bill is out the roof, and everyone is raking in these profits while they're proposing utility rate increases at our frickin' state houses.
If we start reducing the federal government, but your party, the reason your party didn't win, in my opinion, is one, you didn't have a clear message, and two, is because you didn't talk about extending the 2017 tax cuts. Kamala Harris talked about raising taxes.
You can argue presidential all you want. I'm still working with Democratic mayors every day in Indiana. I don't know if you're working with them.
Democratic mayors in Indiana are Republicans mostly anyways, right? You know what I mean? That's really the truth. I went to Indiana University. Your mayors are Republicans. They work as Democrats in the district, right? That's really true. They can have a D next to the name, but they're more conservative than Feisty and me combined.
We can stand up for constituents and making sure that their costs go down every day while y'all are still working about people's profits in the 1%.
But what is the path for Democrats here? Because I think, and I was incredibly critical of Kamala Harris during the campaign because she didn't have an answer on the economy. She didn't have an answer on immigration. She couldn't respond to the Afghanistan withdrawal, which the Biden administration fumbled. And of course, Democrats were just in a bad spot anyway because of how badly Joe Biden bungled his exit, which put her behind anyway from the start. But she didn't pick up the ball and run. She picked up the ball and stood there. And now it seems like you have a few Democrats who want to make this populism against billionaires, and then you have another side of Democrats that are saying, well, I don't really know what to do. And it just seems like the party on a national stage is just directionless.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, with some of this. You've got some Democrats.
DEI, your trend, these trans issues and all this other stuff.
I'm not talking about DEI.
Okay, you're the Filipino guy here, so you're the DEI, all right? So you can be quiet on that.
You do have...
Watch out for them chemtrails.
When everybody does better, everybody does better. And so and I will quote Gary Byrne from the Senate floor yesterday, where this blew up into a huge shit show, by the way. If you haven't watched any of the coverage from yesterday's Indiana legislative session, it was a doozy. But I will tell you, it's really important for us to remember that we can hold folks accountable. There is that section of Democrats who want to eat the rich. I get that. That's not me, but there is that, right? And that comes from a long legacy of building the system to benefit the 1%, right? But we can also hold people accountable to pay what they have to pay and what they should be paying. And that is not a free tax bill for corporations. And so when you have that sentiment, that is hugely driving this conversation. But there are others too. You've got a lot of corporate Democrats in the middle who are still advocating for those policies that keep people poor. And that is why you have a huge dichotomy right now on the left. And you might think it's Dems in disarray, but we're figuring out how exactly we want to better make sure that people's lives are better in America. And I agree on the concerns about.
The fact of the matter is, you lost the people. You guys all lost public opinion. The public opinion, like it or not, is right now with the Republicans. Until you can win the American people over and that your vision is better than what our vision is, you guys are going to be the minority party. And that's really it.
Public opinion and polling right now shows that people are pissed off. Shit's too expensive. They don't give a shit who fixes it. They just want it fixed.
Well, guess what? We've only had a month. It's going to get a lot better real soon.
Oh my God! There's no cursing allowed on here.
There's that double standard.
Get the fuck out of here!
All right, we're gonna wrap it up. I appreciate you guys.
Hold on.
All right, Lindsay's got to go to TV, so we only got a couple of minutes.
He's a fundraising outfit. I watched Michael Bennett. He was very interesting in those back-to-back Senate confirmation hearings. I thought they did a very fascinating job of messaging RFK Jr. in over the course of 3 hours. I'd forgotten that he'd said that that COVID was engineered to spare the Jews, And then he had to answer it under oath, and he's like, "Oh, I'm quoting our study. I'm just quoting our study."
You may be the first person in the world, in the history of the world, that's called Michael Bennett interesting.
You should watch him. You know what? I'm watching your governor, J.B. Pritzker. He's getting thuggy.
Yeah.
Did you say thuggy?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
He-
I'm not
he's
allowed to talk
certainly-
about the governor here because Spicy always gets mad when I crack at Pritzker.
He's certainly trying to position himself as the Democrat in waiting, and Newsom has faded from the scene after the wildfires. So if you look at my inbox every day with the stuff I'm getting from the governor's office, it's all positioning himself as the leader in the clubhouse. So, all right, I know Lindsay's got to go to TV, so we're going to do a quick wrap up, 30 seconds or less, guys. Some final thoughts. Aaron, can I start with you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Patrick. You know, I'm always a big fan of you. It was very nice to meet both of you and have a robust discussion of what's going on the federal side. So it's so nice to meet you. And I look forward to having another opportunity to have a robust and rigorous debate. Take care.
Lindsay?
Thank you as well. I always like hearing from another sad soul who's been placed on a state central committee. It's not a job I would ever envy, but I do want to give props for someone I was really hard on earlier before he was confirmed earlier this last week was now Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy. You know, Sean Duffy got a lot of shit for being literally on road rules. And I was not really ready to give him the due. But he really, through the DCA plane crash, he really stepped up and served with, I thought he just spoke from authority, and it was impressive. I was impressed. I was expecting a shit show, and he was governing with eloquent prose and class.
Tom, any thoughts?
Guys, thank you. This shit's hair's on fire. But thank you guys. No, seriously, thank you though, because look, there's a lot going on, and it's a lot to pick through. It is the opposite of sleepy. So that's why we're here.
All right. Lindsay Hake, Democrat strategist from Indiana. Aaron Del Mar, Republican Central Committeeman from Illinois. Tom LoBianco, 24site.news. And I'm Patrick. Hi. Hello. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us on our live stream. We'll talk to you guys again next time on The Ground Game.
Thanks for having me.